Many do not. They experience the same intensity for years. And I've already mentioned this, but that happens at special times when there was a remembrance of a birthday or an anniversary, or they go to another funeral, or they go to a wedding, or whatever it is. Something that takes them back to that situation. These are the symptoms of grief. These will help you recognize when it happens. But we've already talked a little bit about this denial phase. Shock, disbelief, sadness always. And that can linger for the rest of one's life. Here's a strange one, guilt. I told you about those two fellows who said, I wish we hadn't sent Mom to Florida, and the other one said, I wish we had. Guilt. If I had just been there. My grandson-in-law, who preaches in Quintown, Alabama, told about hearing someone outside of the church building one day screaming. And when he investigated, this lady had come to find out where her father was, and her father sadly had died behind the wheel of his car after he pulled over to the side of the road. And she was screaming and screaming and screaming. And Don told me, he said, I didn't see that car pull over there. Maybe I could have done something. I said, why are you feeling guilty? It just happens. We feel that way. Maybe I should have done, I could have. Why didn't I? After my grandson died, the thought was, could we have called another doctor? Maybe we didn't do enough, and all that kind of thing happens. That's normal. It is not abnormal. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you're human. And everybody wants to save that person, keep that person. A lot of strange things are said at funerals. One fellow said one time that he didn't want to call. He wished his wife was still there, but he wouldn't wish she was there in the condition she was. Well, I understand that. That's a normal thought. One of the most beautiful things I ever heard said at a funeral, a 10-year-old girl had died, and the preacher asked the family, would they rather have her not at all or for the 10 years? And I thought that was an interesting question, not a bad one to ask, not a bad thing to think about. But grief is a roller coaster. It goes up and down and all over the place. Some people even suffer physical symptoms. Do I have that mic on? Okay. Here's what you do, and I've already talked about this, but I want to summarize. You have to let it out, face it, keep it out here, express it, and go to a medical doctor. I would recommend anybody who's grieving, see your doctor and ask him about your physical health. And never let anyone tell you how you feel. And don't tell yourself how you feel either. Because at that moment, you really don't know how you feel. And then plan ahead for those triggers of anniversaries and birthdays. It's coming, just expect it. I used to pride myself on never crying at movies. I'm not good at that anymore, especially sad movies. I don't want to get into that one, not necessary here. Okay, approaching one grieving, approaching one who is grieving. Got it? Okay. Even though it may not seem appropriate at the time, there are some things we should or could or are allowed, or some things to say to a person that's grieving. Things that are sincere, things that are compassionate. We're speaking from our hearts, hopefully. What we're trying to avoid is saying something that adds to the anger, something that adds to the grief, something that won't help the person work through his grief. And for most individuals, when someone dies that's close to us, that's a very private time for most. And it's possible that those closest to the person who died may not want visitors. I don't know. They may not want phone calls. Even through the first couple of weeks after the death, they will allow the preacher to come. That's unusual. They will allow that. But I have to learn the clues from the person. Is he saying to me, leave me alone right now, then I'll try to do that. And if I'm unable to attend the funeral, I still have to be sensitive when I meet the person someplace else. Things to keep in mind, okay? Things to keep in mind when someone close to you or someone you know has had a death. Unless you are the preacher or extremely close to the person, don't contact the person until the funeral. I'll say that one again. Unless I'm extremely close to the person, it's best not to call or contact the person until the funeral or you go to the visitation. They're not in a mindset to remember that you even called, for one thing. But it just interrupts everything they're trying to do. And when you do get a chance to talk to them, would you please not be that person who goes up to the casket and spends 30 minutes talking to the person? 1 minute is long enough. Keep it brief. What are you saying anyway? Talk about that in just a minute. That sounds hard, but it isn't. It's just common sense. And please don't be dramatic. Oh. You know what I've been going through lately? I tell you what, I've just been having it lately, and I don't know what you're going through, but I tell you what I've been going through. People stand at the casket and tell the person who's grieving what they've been going through themselves. We don't do that. And when they look tired or upset, I don't say anything at all. If that person wants me around, he or she will let me know that. And they do it sometimes very bluntly. I'm trying to read the need of this person. I thought you were too comfortable. You were? That's it. That is the best thing you can do, folks. Not a word was said. But you were there. If you ever get a chance to ride with the family back from the cemetery, here's the conversation. Was so-and-so there? Did you see? They don't ask what was said. They won't remember what you preached, Jeremy, very much. They'll tell you how wonderful it was. What they will remember was, you're there. And so just be there. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to worry about what you're going to say when you get up there. And it's comforting. Okay? Well, these are just suggestions. When you email, if you email, that's appropriate, but I'll tell you what, don't expect to hear back for a couple of weeks. They're not in a mood to email you back. It is appropriate, they think, to send an email of condolences, but don't send a text message. That's not appropriate. It's too impersonal. Do you know what I'm afraid of? that you young people are going to never learn how to talk to one another. They sit next to each other and text. How impersonal is that? It's okay always to send a sympathy card or a letter. Now, here are some things to say, okay? Studies show us that these things are appropriate. I am sorry for your loss. That one bothers me just a little bit. Dr. Wolfelt recommended we not even say the word sorry. Why? In his judgment, if you say to a person who's grieving, who's angry, and you say, I'm sorry, the person may think, about what? You didn't do anything. And so I've actually avoided that one. But studies show us that people will accept that. I'm sorry. Not much more than that, though. Just I'm sorry. Here's a good one. It's the one I use all the time. All the time. I'll do it over here. I'll do it over here. Hand touching the shoulder. Look up here. I'm thinking about you. That is a great one. I'm thinking about you. That's it. I don't say any more than that. I'm thinking about you. When my grandson died, Jerry Barber came to the cemetery, walked up to my daughter-in-law and said that to her. I'm thinking about you. She just melted. Somebody cares about me. Not I'm thinking about the baby, I'm thinking about you. That's the one grieving. Sandra, it's okay to cry. That's comforting, isn't it? It's okay to cry. That's not a bad thing to say. Or it's okay to hurt. If you notice that the person's hurting. My grandson's name was James. If you told me that day I miss James too, I would have kissed you. I miss him too. That's a great thing to tell someone. I miss him too. You're in my thoughts, I'm thinking about you. Or you're in my prayers, either one. And then this one, and I tell everyone this that I can, let me know when you want to talk. And that's about it. The less said, the better. And what I would say to a person who's lost a young child is totally different from what I would say to a person whose elderly grandparent died. It would be a different situation. Both are losses, but they're felt at different levels. So here are some things not to say. Oh, I already had those up there. I need the next one. Where'd you lose the one? Things not to say. Go to things not to say. There you go. How you like this one when a child dies? Well, you now have an angel in heaven. You know, you tell that to a child whose brother or sister died, he'll scare him to death. Well, is he going to make me an angel too? This one up there, number one, that's the worst one. I know how you feel. No, you don't. You have no idea how I feel. What did we start teaching at the beginning? Grief is unique, personal, different for everybody. You have no idea how I feel. And that really increases their anger and their grief. Don't get down into the pit with them. Well, you know, when my grandfather died, I don't want to hear what you felt like when your grandfather died. I'm busy grieving. And people get down into the pit with the person and make him feel worse than he did when they started out. I want to do that. Look at that second one. That's what we talked about earlier. God will never give you more than you can handle. You know, I wonder if God sits up there on his computer and goes, let's see how much Travis can take today. Would you worship a God like that? No. But people teach that, don't they? God doesn't put on us any more than we're able to bear. I've heard that from our own pulpits. It's not a true statement. And it certainly says that God's not very merciful. Look at that one. Now, you shouldn't feel that way, Keith. Why are you? I mean, you're a Christian. Why are you crying? Because I'm grieving. Well, Christians shouldn't grieve. I mean, don't you have any faith? I got a letter from a preacher when my grandson died. You know, Keith, people will be watching, see if you've got any faith. I said, well, they can watch all they want. I'm going to grieve. It hurts because I miss him. Well, you're just being selfish. No, I miss him. I didn't ask for him to come back. I'm telling you I'm hurting because I miss him. Not being selfish. I'm not asking for him back. I'm just telling you it hurts. I want you to tell me why Jesus wept at Lazarus' tomb. I think for two reasons. He's faced death and had to fight it, and second, everybody else was crying, and he was sympathetic, empathetic. He understood their tears. Look at that one. Well, time heals all wounds. Wounds all heals too. You know, you'll get over this. Shape up or ship out. How many of you ever heard somebody say, get over it? One of the things I heard at school, and I spent an hour talking about it, Jeremy, several of our students' wives have had miscarriages over the years. And I heard one of the wives tell this girl, well, you know, you can have another one. What she didn't understand was she's grieving about the loss, not thinking about having another one. It's a death. It absolutely is. My daughter had 2 miscarriages. Well, we have 2 grandsons, or whatever they were, in heaven, 2 grandchildren in heaven. Incidentally, we have 5 great-grandchildren now. Congratulate me after a while. Look what I started. Isn't that great? But it helps, but it doesn't mean that I don't miss the ones that are gone. I'd like to know what they look like. You know what bothers me? What are they going to look like in heaven? Are they going to be babies and grow up or what? No, they're souls, aren't they? And there's a difference there. I'll know them. In fact, that 4.5-month-old I spent more time with than I have been able with any of my grandchildren because I was there every day he was alive. Well, you know what? It was his time. You ever heard that one? It was his time, son. He lived a good life, you know. Aren't you glad he's gone? Well, now you have time for yourself, Sandra, that Travis is not around. I heard that one myself at a funeral. Now you have time for yourself. Please don't say that. Tomorrow's a new day, Keith. Cheer up. Yeah, tomorrow's a bad day. I think that we can find it in our hearts to learn to help the person and not make him worse than he was before we got there. You know what? He's not suffering anymore. Yeah, but I am. You didn't come here to talk about him, did you? I need the help. Brother Ownby, the person who's grieving needs the help. You can't do a thing about that person who died. Help the person that's grieving. Let's turn our attention to the one who's still living. It's what Jesus did. Mary and Martha were angry at him, you remember. If you'd been here, he wouldn't have died. Well, just a minute. I am married to the #1 preacher's wife in the whole world. I don't mean I'm the #1 preacher. I mean she's the #1 wife. But this girl had 8 brothers and sisters. 5 of them are already gone. I think I've done 4 of those 5 funerals. And when I do these grief seminars, I just watch your face. And who's on your mind right now, please? Mildred. That's the last one. Closest one to you, probably. Yeah. See what happened just attending the seminar? Now she's sitting there grieving about Mildred. Mildred was a great lady. I went in her, she was in bed and not going to ever get out of that bed alive. And I walked in and she said, "Sing with me." "Okay, what do you want to sing?" "Jesus loves me, this I know." Well, I thought that was great, so I sang with her. I don't sing very well. I'm sorry to irritate you there with that, but that's what we did. She wanted to do that, but at the funeral, the things I heard, Jeremy, from worldly people, most of those cousins and uncles and aunts are, well, there was a homosexual couple. About half of them are living outside of marriage together. And a bunch of alcoholics, drug addicts, you name it, they were there. They have no idea how to comfort a person grieving. It's not possible. They don't think about it. And a lot of the things that are up there, they were saying. And the one I heard the most was, "Well, she's not in pain anymore." I said, "No, but I am. How about me?" Dylan, let's find the one now. I don't see it here. On miss. Here there is. You have to back up. Back. Keep going. There you go. All right. Let's cover that here. And I'll have time to just talk about this and some things we can do when we're grieving. In the society in which you and I live, unfortunately, we're taught how to get. We're taught how to acquire. Unfortunately, we're not taught how to let go. Even in the church, we're not taught how to let go. Unfortunately. In fact, in this nation, death is thought of as a failure. Something wasn't right. And because of that, there are myths about grief that abound in this society. I've already talked about one of them. That's the 5 stages. So I'm not going to get into that. But there are 5 common myths about grief. The first one up there, that grief and mourning are the same thing. That's not true. Grief is what's going on in your mind. The anger, the denial, the bargaining, the shock, the disbelief, the pain, the hurt, all of that is grief. It's going on upstairs as you think. Mourning is the outward expression. We are not allowed to mourn in America. Folks don't like us to cry in public. You know, big boys don't cry. When I was in the United States Navy, back before dirt was invented, I was stationed in Adak, Alaska with a guy there who loved a song by some group called Big Girls Don't Cry. And he played that song daily, Miss Laura, until I cannot stand to hear it today. But it isn't true that big boys and big girls don't cry. Mourning is something shunned by us in this society. We don't like to see it. People who cry at funerals do so quietly. We don't like to upset those around us. We're not taught how to let go. We bottle it up. Got a lot of painful folks walking around, pain-filled folks walking around because of that myth. That second one, I've already talked about it. There is no such thing as an orderly progression to grief. That's the thing I've been talking against all day today. All grieving is individualistic. Dr. Wolfelt told us in class one day, just as people die in different ways, people mourn in different ways. Expecting anything else would be to demonstrate a lack of respect for the uniqueness of the person. Brothers and sisters and friends, would you let me grieve? Please. And would you teach me about your grief? And I'll understand better. I'll be with you. And when you teach me, I'm going to follow the lead you provide me. I'm not trying to move you through the process. I'm trying to be there so you can endure it. Because there is no process. Myth number 3. Avoid grief. Don't embrace it. That's a myth. You have to embrace it. It's there. What that is Stoicism. If you remember the song, Que sera, sera, whatever will be, that's not biblical. And it's not correct either, even logically. The Stoic philosophy is denied at John 11:35. Jesus wept. And this idea that you have to, what's the word they use? Suck it up, I guess is the bad expression, but that's what they say. Come on, get your chin up, Keith. Oh no, I'm going to cry. Get out of my face. You know why people want to know how long grief lasts? Because the society in which we live wants us to get over it. And we don't get over it. People who continue to express their grief outwardly are called self-pitying, weak. Shape up. Wolfelt wrote this, the result of these kinds of messages is to encourage the repression of thoughts and feelings. Refusing to allow tears, suffering in silence, and being strong are thought to be admirable behaviors. Many people in grief have internalized this message from society, and they mourn quietly, quickly, and efficiently. Keith, just go back to work and get busy and you'll be all right. No, I'll be at work grieving. I won't be all right. Staying busy just means you're grieving while you're busy. Doesn't mean you're going to get over being in the grief process. In fact, some people are told, you must be crazy to act that way. Myth number 4. One's goal is to manage or cope with the grief. You know, Keith should be over his grief by now. Evidently, he hasn't learned to cope with it. How many elders here now, Travis? 3. Who are they? 3 elders. You're going to call me sometime to come down and resolve the conflicts here? Please don't. You know, we have that idea in this country, that when there's a problem, let's resolve it. You want to try that? The greatest problem that man has ever had, what is it? Sin. Never been resolved. Can't be. You can't resolve a problem. In order to resolve a problem, I've got to wipe out your memories. Completely erase them. The only thing I can do with a problem is what the Lord did with it. He reconciled the problem of sin. If you're trying to say to someone, manage it, cope with it, get over it, fix it, you're trying to get him to resolve his grief problem. He can't. You're asking me to do the impossible. Erase my memory. I don't have a computer where I can go delete. Jeremy, people have this same problem with forgiveness. Well, I forgave, but I can't forget. Who told you to forget? Just don't bring it up again. Don't be like that lady that got historical with her husband every time they had an argument. God just doesn't bring it up again, fellows. He doesn't forget it. Read the parable of the pounds. He told that guy, I forgave you that. He remembered he forgave you. We have to understand, you can't erase that thing. It's there. There's no way to resolve a conflict. We can reconcile it. You'll have to say, I forgive you. I'll have to say, I forgive you. We're forgiven. Let's go on. That's what you do in marriage. After you've had that knockdown drag out, I forgive. Let's go on. Let's not bring this up again, though. Well, you can't get over losing someone. How are you going to do that? You're asking me to erase the memory of the one that's gone. I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. It can't be done. And this is probably said 5 times today already. One last myth. Laura, what's a myth? Female moth, right? Tears express weakness. Then your master was weak. Oh, Keith, stop crying. Tears won't bring him back. Oh, thanks a lot. I'm not crying to bring him back. Oh, Keith, he wouldn't want you to cry. You're the one who doesn't want me to cry. How do you know what he would want? I told you earlier that when I'm dying, I want 50 people around my bed screaming and hollering and crying because they're going to miss me. You don't think I'll get 50? She is so funny sometimes. Grief cannot and should not be prevented. But we have a lot of myths in this society in which we live. We need to get by them, past them, over them, through them. Dylan, we need to find the one things one can do if grieving. There you go. Here's some suggestions. I've already gone over these. What's that last one? I can't see it. To the deceased. I think that word is deceased. I'll just let you write those down. I've already gone over those. So let's bring it all together here. Also, that kitchen table helps when you beat it with that rolled up newspaper. Grieving is not an event, folks. It's a process. Too many times we might like to think it's just a single event in life. We have a loss, we grieve, we get over it. But when it comes home to us and we experience the loss of one near to us, a whole lot more is involved. We do not get over the loss of a loved one. We simply try to learn how to live without them. And the more often I can teach that principle and get people to accept it, the more often I will have been successful in teaching about grief. And the more I will be better able to help others who are grieving, because I will never be shocked at what they say or how they react or what they're doing or anything else. And the most difficult work of all is the process of grief, mentally speaking. Because you have to invest your physical nature, your emotional nature, even your spiritual nature. And so I want you to expect to grieve, Christian, when you lose a loved one. I expect to grieve when I lose someone. I expect people to grieve when I'm gone. It'd be a shame if they did not. Because that grief is the expression, the outward expression is mourning, but the inward grief is the expression of the closeness of the relationship you had with that person. It hurts. And God said, I know. I want to give you 5 simple things to do that I think help us. And it has to do with our physical features, but I want to make a point about them. Let's go to Genesis 50, verse 10. Dylan, click that thing to things one can do if grieving. Keep going. There. Genesis 50, verse 10, please. There should be 5 up there. I don't know what happened to it. Somebody?
And they came to the threshing floor at Atad, which is beyond Jordan. And there they mourned with a great and very sore lamentation, and he made a mourning for his father 7 days.
They were using their eyes, looking at the place. And I want to recommend that when you're grieving, look at pictures. Look at pictures. All of us are visual to some extent, but reminiscing over those pictures and shedding tears, that's a great time of memory about someone we love tremendously. And we're learning that we're going through a process. We're just looking at pictures. Use your lips. I can't recommend this too strongly. Talk about your loss to someone who will listen. Don't keep those things bottled up. Somebody read 1 Corinthians 12:25. That's what's wrong with that. That should be lips there. 1 Corinthians 12:25. I'll have to fix that overhead, Dylan. It's not right. 1 Corinthians 12:25, someone.
There should be no
Schism.
that there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care one toward another.
When I talk about my loss to someone who really listens, maybe it's the case that this person has gone through something similar and so understands, has empathy for what I'm saying. But everybody needs a support group. Everybody needs help. When Maxine Hill would stand in front of that group and say, my name is Maxine Hill and I have pancreatic cancer, and then we would sit and listen to those tell us their stories, what great help that was. That's what I want us to do after lunch for just a few minutes. And that's why we have brothers and sisters in Christ, to listen. Use your hands. Somebody read Ecclesiastes 9:10. Do something constructive. Not only do we need the time to think, we need the time to do.
Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do with thy might, for there is no work of life, knowledge, or wisdom, or grave, whether thou work.
I don't know if you brothers and sisters are familiar with Johnny Ramsey or were familiar with him. Johnny was a great Texas preacher. He's been gone a long time now, but a lady called him on the phone one day and said, Brother Ramsey, I am so angry at the church. I sit here at home all day long. Nobody comes by to see me or talk to me or anything. Now you have to know Johnny, and Jeremy, don't tell somebody what he told this lady. He said, Sister, you make me sick. He said, go out in the kitchen and bake a pie and take it to somebody in the neighborhood that's sick and leave me alone. Hung up the phone. Johnny knew people, didn't he? She was sitting there grieving over her loss of companionship. He told her to get busy. The next Sunday she saw him at church. She said, I need to talk to you. He said, I thought you might. She said, for some reason, I don't know why, you made me so angry. He said, I thought I might. But I did what you told me to do. And she said, thank you. It's one of the best days I've had in years. She did something constructive. She helped somebody else. That is helpful. Use your hands. What about your knees? 1 Peter 3:12. Get on your knees and pray. Whatever happened to kneeling in prayer in the worship service? We've quit that for years now. We used to do it all the time. But get on your knees and pray. The one who can really help you is the one to whom you should be speaking. Tell him what you're feeling. Jeremiah did. Read his word. Listen to him. 1 Peter 3:12. You know why I talk to God? Because he listens. And he answers. And he cares. And finally, use your feet. Somebody read 2 Samuel 12, 16 through 20. Keep going, keep moving, get a new routine. Takes time, but it's beneficial to get out too, not be a recluse. 2 Samuel 12, 16 through 20. This is David, of course, when his son died.
David therefore besought God for the child, and David fasted, and went in, and lay all night upon the earth. And the elders of the house arose and went to him, to raise him up from the earth. But he was not, neither did he eat bread with them. And it came to pass on the seventh day that the child died. And the servants of David feared to tell him that the child was dead. For they said, Behold, while the child was yet alive, we spoke unto him, and he would not hearken unto our voice. How will he then vex himself, if we tell him that the child is dead? But
What?
when David saw that his servants whispered, David perceived that the child was dead. Therefore David said unto his servants, Is the child dead? And they said, He is dead. And David arose from the earth, washed, and anointed himself, and changed his apparel, and came into the house of the Lord, and worshipped. And he came to his own house, and when he required, and set bread before him, and he did eat.
Keep going, keep moving, a new routine. With the high priest of ancient Israel, thank you for coming. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and give you peace. The Lord lift up his face upon you and be gracious unto you. Thank you for your kind attention this morning. Please come back.